All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl. And I'm here with my good friends Lori and Jason and Dan and Catherine. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. We are on page 182 in the hard copy at the part that is it's a poem called Howl. But before we get going with that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then, Catherine, if you want to take it away with the reading, you can go right with it.
Lori Emmons in Denver.
Dan Sisick in Las Vegas.
Jason Roberts in Tampa, Florida.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement, and I'll get doing the reading here. So at the end of the last chapter, or the last section, they're not really chapters, everything was disappearing again. So she had been in a life where she was a singer in the band, and everything was disappearing. And this poem, it's actually a song, Howl. And at this point, she still doesn't know the words to this song. So she's been afraid to sing it. Remember, she was supposed to sing it supposed to be the finale song. And then she sang Bridge Over Troubled Water instead because she didn't know the words to this song. So here we're getting them. They've mentioned it multiple times. Howl, to the winter forest and nowhere to go. This girl runs from all she knows. The pressure rises to the top. The pressure rises. It won't stop. They want your body. They want your soul. They want fake smiles. That's rock and roll. The wolves surround you. A fever dream. The wolves surround you. So start to scream. Give me just a second. Howl into the night, howl until the light. Howl, your turn to fight. Howl, just make it right. Howl, 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 howl. Motherfucker, you can't fight forever. You have to comply. If your life isn't working, you have to ask why. Remember when we were young enough not to fear tomorrow or mourn yesterday, and we were just us, and time was just now. And we were in life, not rising through like arms in a sleeve because we had time. We had time to breathe. The bad times are here. Bad times have come. But life can't be over when it hasn't begun. The lake shines and the water's cold. All that glitters can turn to gold. Silence the music to improve the tune. Stop the fake smiles and howl at the moon. Howl into the night. Howl until the light. Howl. Your turn to fight. Howl. Just make it right. Howl, 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 howl. And then that repeats. This next section is called Love and Pain. I hate this process, Nora told Mrs. Elm with real force in her voice. I want it to stop. Please be quiet, said Mrs. Elm with a white knight in her hand, concentrating on her move. This is a library. We're the only two people here. That's not the point. It is still a library. If you're in a cathedral, you're quiet because you're in a cathedral, not because other people are there. It's the same with a library. Okay, Nora said in a lower voice. I don't like this. I want it to stop. I want to cancel my membership of the library. I would like to hand in my library card. You are the library card. Nora returned to her original point. I want it to stop. No, you don't. Yes, I do. Then why are you still here? Because I have no choice. Trust me, Nora, if you really didn't want to be here, you wouldn't be here. I told you this right at the start. I don't like it. Why? Because it is too painful. Why is it painful? Because it's real. In one life, my brother's dead. The librarian's face became stern again. And in one life, one of his lives, you are dead. Will that be painful for him? I doubt it. He doesn't want anything to do with me these days. He has his own life, and he blames me that it is unfulfilled. So this is all about your brother? No, it's about everything. It seems impossible to live without hurting people. Well, that's because it is. So why live at all? Well, in fairness, dying hurts people too. Now, what life do you want to choose next? I don't. What? I don't want another book. I don't want another life. Mrs. Elm's face went pale, like it had done all those years ago when she'd got the call about Nora's dad. Nora felt a trembling beneath her feet, a minor earthquake. She and Mrs. Elm held onto the shelves as the books fell to the floor. The lights flickered and then went dark completely. The chessboard and table tipped over. Oh, no, said Mrs. Elm. Not again. What's the matter? You know what the matter is. This whole place exists because of you. You are the power source. When there's a severe disruption in that power source, the library is in jeopardy. It's you, Nora. You are giving up at the worst possible moment. You can't give up, Nora. You have more to offer, more opportunities to have. There are so many versions of you out there. Remember how you felt after the polar bear? Remember how much you wanted life? The polar bear. The polar bear. Even these bad experiences are serving a purpose, don't you see? She saw the regrets she had been living with most of her life were wasted ones. Yes, the minor earthquake subsided, but there were books scattered everywhere, all over the floor. The lights had come back on, but still flickered. I'm sorry, said Nora. She started trying to pick up the books and put them back in place. No, snapped Mrs. Elm. Don't touch them. Put them down. Sorry. And stop saying sorry. Now, you can help me with this. This is safer. She helped Mrs. Elm pick up the chess pieces and put up the board for a new game, putting the table back in place too. What about all the books on the floor? Are we just going to leave them? Why do you care? I thought you wanted them to disappear completely. Mrs. Elm may well have just been a mechanism that existed in order to simplify the intricate complexity of the quantum universe. But right now, sitting down between the half-empty bookshelves near her chessboard, set up for a new game, she looked sad and wise and infinitely human. I didn't mean to be so harsh, Mrs. Elm managed eventually. That's okay. I remember when we started playing chess in the school library, you used to lose your best players straight away, she said. You'd go and get the queen or the rooks right out there and they'd be gone. And then you would act like the game was lost because you were just left with pawns and a knight or two. Why are you mentioning this now? Mrs. Elm saw a loose thread on her cardigan and tucked it inside her sleeve, then decided against it and let it loose again. You need to realize something if you are ever to succeed at chess, she said, as if Nora had nothing bigger to think about. And the thing you need to realize is this: the game is never over until it is over. It isn't over if there's a single pawn still on the board. If one side is down to a pawn and a king and the other side has every player, there is still a game. And even if you were a pawn, maybe we all are, then you should remember that a pawn is the most magical piece of all. It might look small and ordinary, but it isn't, because a pawn is never just a pawn. A pawn is a queen in waiting. All you need to do is find a way to keep moving forward, one square after another. And you can get to the other side and unlock all kinds of power. Nora stared at the books around her. So are you saying I only have pawns to play with? I'm saying that the thing that looks the most ordinary might end up being the thing that leads you to victory. You have to keep going, like that day in the river. Do you remember? Of course she remembered. How old had she been? Must have been 17, as she was no longer swimming in competitions. It was a fraught period in which her dad was cross with her all the time, and her mum was going through one of her near mute depression patches. Her brother was back from art college for the weekend with Ravi, showing his friend the sights of glorious Bedford. Joe had arranged an impromptu party by the river with music and beer and a ton of weed, and girls who were frustrated Joe wasn't interested in them. Nora had been invited and drank too much and somehow got talking to Ravi about swimming. So could you swim the river? He asked her. Sure. No, you couldn't, someone else had said. And so, in a moment of idiocy, she had decided to prove them wrong. And by the time her stoned and heavily inebriated older brother realized what she was doing, it was too late. The swim was well underway. As she remembered this, the corridor at the end of the aisle in the library turned from stone to flowing water. And even as the shelves around her stayed where they were, the tiles beneath her feet now sprouted grass, and the ceiling above her became sky. But unlike when she disappeared into another version of the present, Mrs. Elm and the books remained. She was half in the library and half inside the memory. She was staring at someone in the corridor river. It was her younger self in the water as the last of the summer light dissolved towards dark. Do we want to stop or go forward?
I think we should go ahead and read that memory because it's pretty
Okay.
short.
Okay. Equidistance. The river was cold and the current strong. She remembered as she watched herself the aches in her shoulders and arms, the stiff heaviness of them as if she'd been wearing armor. She remembered not understanding why, for all that effort, the silhouette of the sycamore trees stubbornly stayed the same size, just as the bank stayed exactly the same distance away. She remembered swallowing some of the dirty water and looking around at the other bank, the bank from which she had come, and the place where she was kind of now standing, watching, along with that younger version of her brother and his friends, beside her, oblivious to her present self and to the bookshelves on either side of them. She remembered how, in her delirium, she had thought of the word equidistant, a word that belonged in the clinical safety of a classroom. Equidistant, such a neutral, mathematical kind of word, and one that became a stuck thought, repeating itself like a manic meditation as she used the last of her strength to stay almost exactly where she was. Equidistant, 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 not aligned to one bank or the other. That was how she had felt most of her life, caught in the middle, struggling, flailing, just trying to survive while not knowing which way to go, which path to commit to without regret. She looked at the bank on the other side, now with added bookshelves, but still with a large silhouette of a sycamore tree leaning over the water like a worried parent, the wind shushing through its leaves. But you did commit, said Mrs. Elm, evidently having heard Nora's thoughts, and you survived.
I think that's a good place to stop. I think it was interesting how in this part it kind of is this. Let me get back to here. I underlined a little bit that made me start thinking and start at the beginning of this section. Well, not the very beginning, but after a few bits of it. Nora was saying it seems impossible to live without hurting people. And I mean, obviously throughout her whole life up until this point where she did tried to commit suicide and ended up in the library, you could see how she was kind of stifling herself based on how she felt like she had failed everybody in her life. And I it seems like that sometimes when you're going through life and you're struggling and things are happening and you're maybe you're not following what you want to do, or maybe you don't even know what you want to do, and you feel like you're just letting people down, like, right and left in one way or another. And I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I've felt that way all the time in my life, but there have been a number of times in my life where I felt like, I was stuck, just stuck in this space that I didn't have any control over. Like every other person in my life was the controlling factor in it. And yet at the same time, in this part later in the chapter where she's talking about, but you did commit and you survived, right? Is you just took what you had to work with and you just pushed through. And I've experienced that a lot in my life too, where everything's going sideways or seemingly sideways, and I just was like, well, I can't stop what's already happened, but I can take what is happening right now and just push through and make it work, whatever way that is, and end up coming out on the other side, if you will. Like, she obviously survived the river. And I feel like a lot of times that's what life feels like, is this raging river that we're just trying to survive. And yet sometimes it feels like we're swimming against the current, and other times when we just kind of let go and let God, if you will. I know that's kind of a cliche saying, but the truth is that when we let go and we let God and we just act in the moment versus worrying about the future or worrying about the past or worrying about who we might hurt or not hurt, is that we just kind of let go and let God, and then everything just works out somehow. I don't know. I mean, regardless, we're still here, right? We're still alive. We're still working through life, and you know, we can think it's not a happy situation, or we can think it's an opportunity, or we can think it's, we choose whatever we're going to think about something in any given moment. All right, that's all my rambling for now.
That's what we were talking about, that overflowing bucket of perseverance that you got to have. Or at least I do. It's so funny we were talking about that before the program
Interesting
started.
how what Samantha said and what you were saying, they work together. But it's like, for me, interesting enough, for over this last year, I've been going through a lot of stress and struggles because I'm still working my way through trying to get to the other side and get financially back to where I was before the accident happened. And I kind of really understand this feeling. I'm feeling really stuck and really kind of like I'm not even equidistant. I'm kind of where I'm still kind of almost equidistant. I felt like I was getting there, but some stuff's happened recently that kind of has not helped. And a lot of what I'm feeling too is the pressure I'm putting on myself because of what, and I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it because these people mean something to me. So I'm worried what they will think also of some of the stuff that's going on in my life that I haven't shared with a lot of people, because one, partly of the self put upon embarrassment that I put on myself, because it's like I feel I'm better and more than this, but yet here I am going through all this stress and struggles and trying to, financially get back to it, rather than, like Samantha saying, truly stop stressing, trust and believe that, God has a plan and that he will get me through it. Whether it is the plan that I might want it to be or not, that's really not the point. The point is, I will get to the other side, whatever the other side is, and I've got to understand that it could be very different than what I may think it is, but I can't give up either. I definitely don't want to be like Nora and just, be afraid to keep pushing forward. And I never have in my life, but there are times when my life has just made me feel like, why do I keep trying? Every time I try and start getting somewhere, I get smacked backwards. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel like, I was doing good in my 20s for a while, and then something happened. Then, about 12 years ago, things were going good and then I got smacked, with some stuff and went through some real stress and struggles. Got through that. And now over this last year, my life was going really good. And then boom, I got smacked again. And that's the feeling. I kind of feel that's kind of maybe how Nora's felt. She's always felt kind of like no matter what she's tried, she always felt like she was smacked or something just got in the way or it hurt too much to want to keep trying. But yet, for her, I think for her, in a way, roundabout way, she did keep trying a little bit. She just didn't realize that she was trying or didn't give herself enough credit. And she was letting too much worry of hurting everybody else. And that's something I do a lot is I tend to worry about, well, I can't do this because that'll affect them and that'll, make them and it's like, the stress you put on yourself. So some of this I can really relate to.
Yeah, and some of that pressure is like the current she was mentioning in the river, and how much of that current that we're struggling against in those situations, how much of that is being caused by ourselves, by the pressure we're putting on ourselves, like what you said in regards to our own expectations or what we think others um, want, or are worrying that we will hurt others, or thinking that we know what other people's expectations are, or how excuse me, how we might measure up. um, you know that pressure that we create ourselves is like that current that we're struggling against, and then so maybe part of that saying of letting go and letting God is letting go of that our own pressure and our own um, obstacles we put up in front of ourselves that can free ourselves to move forward or to move sideways or backwards or whichever way is necessary. You know, just a thought.
It's the control factor that you want to be in control, and you can't control what everyone else is thinking or doing or expecting. Somehow, it's like riding a horse. You got to hold the reins and guide the horse where you want to go, but there's so many things that affect the ride.
Yeah, I'm reminded I'm talking about just, the let go and let God aspect of this. And then, there's this statement in here about, even the bad experiences are serving a purpose. And And I feel like in my life, a lot of times the bad experiences, the purpose that it was serving was to remind me that, I didn't have to try and control everything, and that more often than not, the more controlling I was of the situation, or the more narrow-minded I was with the idea of what outcomes should be, is the more I struggled. And the more that I let go of expectations and narrow ideas of how things should go, the easier it became. It's so contradictory, because we feel like we really should be doing or acting or being or whatever within the confines of everyone else's expectations. And I don't know about you guys, I kind of grew up with this idea, being raised in the Christian school, that I come second to everyone else. And I don't know why. I don't remember them ever saying those words specifically, but it was like this underlying thing of, like God, your elders, if you're married, your spouse, everybody else was above. And yet, I've come to realize over the years that I think it was being taught to us backwards, in my opinion. And, that they gave us this idea that God was outside of ourselves, and that we had to defer to him as if he was outside of ourselves, and that everybody else is above ourselves. And my realization that I've come to is that God is inside ourselves, and that he is a part of us, and that we are God as much as God is everything. And that we have to act from that perspective. And I know it almost seems contradictory to our entire human culture, because it means being self-centered. But self-centered is a whole different thing than what we've been taught to believe, is that for me, it is taking responsibility for every aspect of my life. That's being self-centered. And for taking responsibility for everything that has happened to me because of the choices that I have made. That is a aspect of being self-centered. And trusting that everything that I feel about everything else is because of my own thoughts, feelings, actions, etc. And I'm the one that is creating my reality. That's what I feel like is the self-centered aspect of it. And if I recognize all of that, then I can let go of a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, because I am the only one that controls how I feel about anyone else. And if I recognize that, then I can also recognize that everyone else is the only one that can control how they feel about anything I do or do not do. And it's not my responsibility to make sure that they feel a certain way, because I have absolutely no control over that, because I can do what I think that they want and still disappoint them, because of their everything, And so if we look at this as the statement of, it seems impossible to live without hurting people, and the librarian says that's because it's because we have no control over whether we hurt people or not. They're the only ones that have control over that. And then another kind of like another aspect of the God of, is it, if God is a part of me and I am a part of God, then trusting in God is the same as trusting in myself, and remembering that my God self has my best interest at the core of that interaction. And when I fight against what I think God wants, it doesn't make sense, because I'm literally fighting against myself, right? And so I have to let go of this idea that I am just this tiny little human being that has so little control, and open myself up to the fact that I am a part of God and God is a part of me, and that I can let go of all of this human mumbo jumbo and trust that I know what's good for me from a spiritual standpoint, and that I can allow for that stuff to manifest in my life if I just let go of trying to control all the mumbo jumbo that I see in this physical plane and that seems to be an experience. That's my thought.
That
Well,
stirs
I'm
up
just,
so much. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm always amazed at how every week, no matter what book we're reading, like something speaks so directly to me, and like this week's material and everything that's just been spoken is like this past week have revealed so many of those things. Not that it hasn't been revealed before in my life, but it just amazes me how current it is. How stuff happens through the week, and then we come here and talk about it through this book. Like it's always just mind blowing. But and these are things that I don't wish to discuss in a public forum, but I just want you guys to know that it's hilarious uh, how directly it speaks to some situations in my life right now. And
I
that
second
is
that.
what convinced, yeah. And I know it's like that for every one of us. That's the mind-blowing part. It's not that I recognize it's that way for me. I know it's that way for all of us. And how can it be that way? Right? And that's why I can let go and let God, because it is just so obviously in my face all the time at how life is here for me, is happening for me, not to me. And I just need to let it happen. And yeah, I like that too, Jason. Trusting in God is trusting in ourselves. That was very good and very true. And when we feel like these big major things, just slap us in the face or whatever. What is that how you said it, Dan? Something was slapping you or kicking you or something. Yeah, it feels like that. And sometimes it feels like we just get in this false sense of I think that's why sometimes some people are afraid to be happy, because they are afraid that if they get happy, then something will come and smack them. And because it seems like just as we get things on it, we're got a plan, things are going to go this way. But see, that's me trying to control things again. I get it in my head that things are going to be going a certain way, and I kind of relax into that. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, things are not going to be in a certain way. But then in every one of those situations, there's more choices to be made, and you know so many learning opportunities every day. And just so hilarious that we come here and it speaks to each one of us on such a level as to something that has actually happened like that week most of the time. It's amazing how, like, I don't know who or what God is, but they are freaking amazing. Like, which I guess means we are amazing, but I'm not willing to accept all that amazement yet. I just think it's so fascinating how each and every one of us, our lives is doing this like every second of every moment. It's just mind blowing to me. It really is. I understand why people lose their I don't know if you want to call it sanity, but lose their minds when they delve deeply into some subjects.
Yeah, I was gonna throw out that, yeah, it is interesting how almost every book we go through does, again, reiterating what you were saying, that it somehow plays some aspect into what's going on in my life and things that are going on there. And between, some of the things that everybody said today, it's reminding me that, of how I believe, and it brought up a actual verse, and it's my favorite verse from the Bible. It's called Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a peace and a future." And I used to have it totally memorized, but in that sense, you know, I try to hang on to that and keep that in my mind and in my heart, because I do fully believe that when I do kind of really, relax and let go and trust God, like you said, Samantha, it usually somehow plays out, sometimes not exactly the way I want it. The last go round has played out pretty well, because my life is, up until within this last year, I've had relatively, it's been pretty much the life I've wanted. This last little go round, with the accident last year, it has thrown a big hiccup in it, and it's turned me upside down to where I think in some cases I might have forgotten and not trusted in that belief of that, God, the universe, all that has a better plan for me. And somehow I've got to learn to trust and follow that wherever it may lead. And going back to what I said earlier, it may not be always exactly what I want, but hopefully it will be something more. And I'm not going to say what the more is, I don't know yet, but I don't want to. Go ahead.
It's so funny that we trust in that, except for this or except for that and except for me. If we're all one and part of the same, you can't have that.
So in that, I've got to. I don't like the feeling of this not knowing where I'm at. I hate that feeling, and that's part of what bothers me. I'm the control freak of everything. I like to know what's going on and where, and so in that sense, that's part of what throws me off on all this. So, but I've got to let go on some of that too.
Left us all speechless.
Lots of contemplation going on, I guess. Didn't mean to do that. I was just speaking where I'm at, and sometimes I think that helps too. It's just getting it out too. Sometimes just speaking it out and letting the universe and God go from there. And like I said, going back and trusting, that this too shall pass.
That is my favorite saying. This too shall pass.
That and they know not what they do. Say those two things all the
Exactly.
time.
But it's funny how going back, I think to Samantha's point is how we do get caught up in the minutia of in this moment or right now at this point in time, and we tend to let ourselves get stuck there, kind of like Nora in that river, equidistant, and just kind of swimming to keep there. And I think sometimes we get ourselves to that point. And I'm going to throw this out, and maybe it's going to sound a little dark the way I say it, but I think I think sometimes we also let ourselves get there because we're in a roundabout way, we're hoping that it'll force something to happen or force us to have to give up rather than pulling it in within ourselves to rise up and overcome it. And I think sometimes we all get to that point a little bit until we kind of reassess, and then something usually kicks in. It's like, no, I'll be damned if I'm going to let this do me in. I'm going to be, I'm not going to go down that way. But I have to kind of get to that point too, where I'm in that moment where it's like almost like do or die too sometimes.
Yeah, we kind of put ourselves on the spot. But it's like we're told to go for it. We're told to go for it, but then it seems like it's so easy to put all of our chess pieces out there, and when we're not, we don't quite realize what exactly we're doing, and that's going for it, but maybe we're ill prepared at the moment that we decide to just jump in the water and start swimming. Hadn't quite thought it through, but then you put yourself on the spot and you do what you need to. And speaking of passes, it was interesting how in the scene Nora was reminded that she was the library card. She was the pass. She provided the power, and she set the chessboard, and it was up to her how to use each of the pieces. I love what Samantha had said about you sometimes it's like we all feel like we've gotten stuck at some point, and then it's our own perceptions or expectations that can make it seem more of a failure, even when from others people's point of view they may not see it that way. And I liked how she was saying, just you push through with what you have, just kind of make it happen. You put yourself in the spot like Dan was saying, and then you sort of let go of the pressure that you're putting against yourself, or that you think is coming against you from other angles, and you just pick yourself up by the bootstraps and move forward in whatever direction you can. And also love how Catherine was talking about how things like this in our discussions, they just sort of somehow come into alignment with with something that's going on in our lives, and it just strikes me that how important it is that in order to receive those messages, we have to be open and in alignment ourselves, and give ourselves the opportunity to receive them through groups like this. You know, because where I can't imagine anywhere else that I would be able to hear and receive messages like that, other than a group like this, you know.
How everything is so personal and yet impersonal. It fits all of us. It's just a miracle.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Dan.
I was just going to throw out. It's interesting how you came back to the Nora and how um, the librarian, Mrs. Elms, reminded her that she is the library card or library pass, so to speak, and how she powers. And I think sometimes it just kind of, like in my head, it's like, wow, if we're not the ones living our life, then how are we affecting everything else around us in our lives? If we're not really living, or if we're not cognizant, because I'll say this, there are some people I believe are just out there just existing, doom, whatever, and I believe that each one of us here, we try to at least live our lives as best we can. We have our moments, we have our times, but I think we all do try to live, and I think we all understand that in this, we all have a vital part in that existence and in that living, and we do try to live it. Not saying that we don't have our moments where we get smacked and knocked backwards. After going 20 feet, we get smacked and go back 1,000 feet. That type of idea. But it's I think there's a lot to be said that in our lives, because each moment and each step we take, that does open up the new opportunities for how we can move our life forward. But at the same point, if we don't move, or if we don't, or if we're reacting, and right now, the last couple of days, I've been reacting, I'll be honest. It's kind of, you give up that power in a sense too. And that's not a good place to be either. As I think, as long as whatever we go through when we're in those moments, as long as we try to go forward, making the best decisions with the best choices, we don't always know how they'll play out, but at least we're moving forward rather than just allowing it to toss us to and fro, or to allowing the floor to crumble out from underneath our feet, so to speak, like in the library, or to fade back from the life that we're living in back to the library, where we are in that point where we're in that indecision place. And that was a little helpful reminder this week to me that, um, I have some things I have to do. A couple of them I don't like and feel like I want to do, but I know it's something I need to do because it will hopefully ultimately lead towards going on a path I hope that is the right path that I want to go on, and that I believe can get me on the path to where I can, continue living the life that I'm in, just knowing that there's a little couple winding trails in the road there, and to get through that.
I think it's a matter of being a reservoir with an inlet and an outlet. Otherwise, you're a stagnant pond. And you got to have something to stand for, or you'll fall for anything.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Lori, and you know, particularly when we're talking about our lives, when we feel like we're in a place of not knowing what to do because maybe we don't even know what we want, or maybe we think we know what we want, but we're undecided on making choices, and we sit there in that spot and we don't do anything, then we aren't going anywhere. You know, all we're doing is letting the waves smash up against us, and we're not uh we're just like in a boat without a sail and without a rudder, you know. We're just sitting there floating, seeing whichever way it goes, you know. Whereas if we, you know, set our sail and we set our rudder with a goal in mind, is that at least we're moving in a direction that we are working towards, you know, whatever that might be. And you know, so for example, like, you know, with us in our trucking business, we've had a number of setbacks this year, you know, and I could just let those setbacks overwhelm me and just sit here and be like, oh, whatever, you know, be all depressed about it or this or that or the other. But if I focus on continuing to, regardless of whatever is happening, I'm focused on, okay, we're still working towards being successful, which means, you know, for us, it means being profitable. It means having a paycheck regularly. It means, you know, finding more work, you know, all these different things. And, you know, if I make decisions in the moment based on what I ultimately want the outcome to be, then at least I'm moving in that direction, you know. Now, I may have some other thing that comes up in my path that blocks me and sends me off in another direction, but then I can change, I can look at that and be like, okay, well, what do I want the outcome to be in this situation, and work towards that. And also it's kind of like, you know, you still have to be trusting, right? Because trusting in yourself, knowing that you're going to make the right decision in any given moment. You know, it's like with Nora and all her regrets from early in her life, is that she regrets every decision that she made regarding everything. And when you're in that stuck space of just being regretful for every choice that you make because you don't like the outcome, then you stay stuck in that regret. You stay stuck in your irritated space of your life, rather than having a positive outlook towards, even if we're just completely just going, okay, I trust in God or myself that I'm going to get to a place that is a good place to be, just by having the intention of being in a positive space. I mean, we inevitably will go towards a positive way, you know, even if there's some rocky roads along the way. I mean, we still are going in that direction if we're still focusing on the things that we are feeling positive about. You know, it's like this whole year, if I was to look at all of the crap that has gone wrong, and focus on all of the negative stuff, I mean, I would be doom and gloom. The whole world's going to be to an end, you know. I mean, it just, but yet I keep going, you know, it doesn't matter what the ultimate outcome of the situation is. It matters what I'm focused on. If I'm focused on, you know, the business being successful and it still falls apart, at least I am having a positive attitude through my life and enjoying the journey. You know, like Catherine was saying before, it's all part of the journey, you know, because we can't control what happens. All we can control is ourselves in the moment. And that sometimes seems contradictory, right? Because we're sitting here and we're saying, okay, you know, I want this successful business, or I want this successful relationship, or I want this successful whatever. And also letting go of what the outcome might be, because it seems like a contradiction in and of itself. Because if we are focused on being successful and we don't become successful, of course, we have that definition of what we think success equals, But in reality, all we have is this moment right here throughout every day. It's just this moment right here. And if we're focused on doom and gloom, then that means that we're making this moment all about doom and gloom. And if we're focused on positivity and enjoyment and achievement, then that's what we experience in our day-to-day lives, because ultimately we have no idea what the results may be. And it really doesn't even matter, because even when we get to the results, it's still going to be, what are we focused on in the result? You know, it was like years ago when we lived on the river, and we would have floods every so often. And if I was focused on the fact that, okay, we're stranded and I can't go to work, and, you know, and there's flooding happening and some of the things are getting washed away, or this is getting ruined, or that, or blah, 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 then those days when we were going through those floods, they would have been miserable. But instead of being focused on everything we could potentially be losing in those moments, I was focused on the fact that I was having a nice day off from work, and that the sun was shining, and that the trees were extra green, and my kids were giggling in the background because they were playing at home and they weren't at school. And, you know, I mean, there is all of these things that in every given moment we have the opportunity to focus on feeling miserable or focus on feeling good. And that's the key. I feel like it doesn't matter what the outcome ultimately is, because I mean, you know, a lot of times in those floods we lost a lot of stuff, you know, a lot of personal items that, you know, just either ended up just getting ruined because of sludgy water, or because, you know, they literally got washed away. Like we had our hot tub floated away, you know. So, I mean, and I could have been upset about that, or I could be like, oh, well, at least that's one thing I don't have to maintain anymore, you know. I mean, it's just, it all just depends on what you're focused on. You know, I remember I haven't looked at these pictures in a lot of years, but sometimes when we would have floods, it would only be, you know, like a foot of water, and it wouldn't be rushing because of where we were situated. And so we would go down the stairs. Our like main living space was up on like the second level, and we had like just a cinder block basement that, you know, a lot of times the flood waters would go through there. But it'd be up 6 or 8 inches or whatever, and we'd go walking down our stairs, and we'd go, you know, stomping in the water. We'd all have our, you know, our rain boots on and stomping through the floody water, and you know, we just would have a good time with it. And you know, I look back on those times and I don't see unpleasantness, even though there was a fair amount of that, you know, loss wise, in terms of financial loss and all of that. But I remember those moments, and I have no doubt that my kids have positive memories of those times. And it's really just those moments, you know, every moment we have an opportunity that you know, we can focus on something happy, or we can focus on something unpleasant, because no matter what, shit's gonna happen. You know, people are gonna be involved, some people are gonna be hurt, some people are not. And yeah, it's just, what are you looking at in a given moment? You know, what are your opportunities versus what is the shit that's hitting the fan? You know.
It is a matter of your unending bucket of perseverance that keeps it overflowing.
What if we were to look at it like that? You know, okay, we have a couple of buckets here, you know, and we've got some post-it notes, and I've got my bucket of perseverance or happiness, or I've got this bucket of doom and gloom. You know, which bucket do I want to fill up? You know, if I write a note on my post-it note and stick it in my perseverance bucket or my positivity bucket, or I can write a note and put it in my swear bucket, you know, or whatever, or, you know, my negative bucket. Which one do I want to fill up every day? And I know sometimes it feels like you can't. It sometimes feels like you just can't even smack yourself out of writing the negative notes, right? That's all I'm focused on today is writing negative notes. And yet I can, if I really want to, I can write a positive note, stick it in my positive bucket.
Well, and you have to. You're the only one that can snap yourself out of that doom and gloom spot. That's the thing, and that's why I love this group, because through the years, we've come across so many different ways of shifting that energy, because it is energy, if you want to look at it in that kind of a light, it's energy, and you get on this like doom and gloom vibration. But there are things that you can do, whether it's music, meditation, or getting out in nature, or doing a dance. um, I tell my granddaughter, you have to have your favorite song, a song that you can sing in your head, or that you can hear in your head, that makes you happy for whatever reason. Maybe it's the silliest song you ever heard or something, but it's a song that makes you laugh. And because it's such a easy way, music is such an easy way. And even if you don't have access to music at the moment, you can always imagine the music in your head, and it just can shift your vibration, or just humming, or all these things that we've learned through the years to take control of that situation. Because I know that there are people that need medication uh, to help them, but I think there's a lot of people that just get in that space, that doom and gloom space, and they don't know how to break that, uh, vibration. They don't know how to get out of it. They haven't studied any of this. Most people have not studied all this self-help stuff, you guys. Like, we're really in a very small percentage of people, which kind of blows my mind, because I'm just too inquisitive to imagine, not trying to figure all this out. But they if they don't know how to get out of it, because it seems like or at least for me, and I'm sure for everybody here, if something bad happens in the morning, if I don't break that negativity right there, I will have a bad day. I mean, it turns into, from one thing, it turns into, a bad moment, to a bad hour, to a bad day, if I don't recognize it and take the action and get off on another keel. That's why I love listening to Abraham Hicks in the morning, or not just Abraham, it might be somebody completely different, but somebody like that, that kind of does that, puts me off on a different path instead of that bad path, because it seems like energy attracts like energy, and it just kind of snowballs. And it's really easy once you're down there, it's easy to look around and see all the other dark stuff that's down there. Then you start focusing on that. And then the next thing you know, you're focusing on, God forbid you turn on the news. Holy shit, don't do that. Like, I mean,
Don't do that.
you're you're way you've ruined your day at that point, if you have any kind of, because we can't figure all that stuff out. I'm not saying, don't do anything to help our world or what's going on and things. I'm just saying, like, we have to focus on the moment and what we can do in that moment to fill the good bucket, like you said, Samantha. Um, because when we start taking on, yeah, we're a piece of God. God is experiencing life through us, but and maybe at some level we have the capacity to really handle all of that worldly stuff on our shoulders. But for the majority of us in this experience, that's very overwhelming. And our minds don't understand the difference between a real threat and an imagined threat. So we have enough real threats going on. We don't need to imagine all this other stuff on top of it. And then our bodies are like freaking out on an energetic and a nervous system level. That's why so many people, their nervous systems are just stuck on, you know, like their foot, the pedals to the metal, so to speak, and they don't know how to put the brakes on. And they might be going in the totally wrong direction. They might be that train that's getting ready to go off the side of the cliff or whatever, and they're just so stuck in that one way, you know. So being open, like you said, it's being open to looking at that situation and realizing that there are always choices. And you're right, Samantha, we only have this moment. That's all we ever have. We like to think about what we're going to do tomorrow or what we're even going to do an hour from now, but we don't know. We have this moment, and what are we going to do in this moment to either make our lives better, or, you know, I'm one of those people, Samantha, I put other people ahead of me constantly. What am I going to do to make somebody else's life better? And if and we need to ask those questions, you know, just ask those questions, because sometimes we don't know, but God has a greater plan for us. And when we ask, we'll get answers, or we'll be shown something um, that will help guide us. But we have to be open to that guidance, because if we're just stuck in our doom and gloom, and I have literally been to this place where Nora is at, where I just want it to stop. I want this life to stop, and I want all reincarnations to stop. Like, I'm just tired of all this shit. And I have totally been there. And it's kind of a ridiculous place to be when you think about it, because, you know, like Mrs. L, there's so many possibilities where you could be happy, you know, and you're choosing to just be so unhappy that you just want everything to stop. I mean, that's such a narrow focus when you're like that. Because when I compare, if I were to have my buckets and I was to have to write a sticky note on post-it note on you know, the things that have happened in my life, I would have a pretty big bucket of shit over there. It's true. But I would have a much, much, much towering over bucket of amazing and wonderful, awe-inspiring moments in my life. Good things, good people, good friends, good food, good, good everything. Like, it would, they wouldn't even, like, it'd be like this little teeny tiny speck compared to this huge thing, you know. So when you get to that point, you do have to realize that you're so narrowly focused on the misery at that point. And if you can just, you know, step back away from that and look at the broader, because it really is, it's all it comes down to is our focus in the moment, and our ability to change that or not. And I, you know, this is why my heart goes out to people that take their lives, because they're in that moment and they're so hopeless, and they just don't see any other way out, and that's the only way that makes sense. And that's why, you know, as a that's why I don't think God, like some people think God judges or punishes people that commit suicide. I don't think so. Like, I think God understands our suffering. I really do. Um, they may not give as much power to our suffering as we do, because they realize um, the bigger picture all the time, you know. So they realize all the lessons that are being learned from that suffering, or whether it's our lesson or somebody else's lesson, maybe the nurse taking care of us or the friend talking to us over the phone or whatever, like there's so many lessons involved in each one of these things. It's not just for us. I do believe that we voluntarily take on some of these things to help not just ourselves, but other people through these parts that everybody has to play. And so I do think God understands our suffering and doesn't, I mean, they know that we don't have most of us or all very few people have the capacity to really look at it from that larger viewpoint, and understand it and not they understand the frailty of humans, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't think there would be any punishment. I certainly wouldn't punish somebody for feeling so hopeless that they made a bad decision like that. So, but again, it's been another amazing day, you guys, another amazing talk. It always is. I love you so much. And you know, use the good post-it notes this week more than the bad ones. Love you.
Love you all. Have a great week.
Yep. Walk around with the post-it on my forehead. Positivity.
On your forehead, then you couldn't see it.
But everybody else would.
Oh my gosh, I picked up my granddaughter from school and she had a post-it note that said loser on her forehead. And I
Ah,
snatched that off. I said, don't you ever put anything like that on your head again.
Oh my
We're gonna,
gosh.
I know we're gonna have to do the rice experiment or one of those
oh,
experiments that shows the power of words and yeah.
yeah. That's the other thing. Another good point, just in the power of words to ourselves. Going back to previous books that we talked about, what we say to ourselves when we talk to ourselves too, that is another and hence part of what I was doing, thinking too much too, a little bit and saying some things. Probably why I couldn't get back to sleep this morning because I could not get my brain to settle down. So that was another part. But coming here today kind of picked my spirits up and kind of reminded me of, that what I've been going through over the last year. And there are lots of great high points and good points and stuff. And I need to remember that. And I need to remember that this is not the lowest point and it's not going to remain the lowest point. And I said I have some steps I need to take to work on it. But this too, it will pass and it will get better. And I know it will get better because I'm not going to sit around and just kind of worry and letting it fix itself because it's not. I got to do some steps, more point and get a hold of some people and say, okay, what do I need to do to work on getting back on track on a couple things, and then hopefully go through that process and go from there. And today really helped me remember that and not be afraid of my own thoughts of how I looked at it and what they might think. It doesn't matter what they think. The reality is what I'm going through.
That's awesome.
And
Jim.
love you.
Reminds
And love
me,
you.
reminds me of perspective, and then the other book we read about, change your thoughts, change your mind, or change the world around you, right? Change, and you sort of get into alignment with whatever you choose by having the right thoughts. That just seems it always well, I just notice how some people they are so great at turning even the negativity, or even the negative, not, I would say negative, because it's not necessarily negative, but whatever situation that they're in, turning it to their into a positive for them. Like some people are great at playing the victim role, and some of are always feel like they must, can never play the victim role. And it's just all about our own perception, and maybe where we're comfortable being. I mean, do we feel like we, I feel like for myself, I'm like in life, I like to travel from one island of stability to another island of stability, to where, and each time, notch up a bit, and level up, so to speak, a bit, and then anchor on that island of stability. That doesn't, it just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with, because some people are great with dealing with turmoil, and they feel more comfortable if they're in that sort of a place. Some people, may feel a little more uncomfortable when things are going really, really well. They're like, when is the storm going to hit, kind of a thing. So it's all, a lot of it anyway is in our own head and how we perceive things. So thanks for that, Dan. I appreciate that, and best of luck to everybody. Best of luck, love, joy, and happiness through the next week. Appreciate y'all very much. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your experiences and your feelings and your insights, because we all benefit from that. I mean, like Catherine was saying earlier on, it's just amazing sometimes how we get on here and it just hits right at home, what we're talking about every time. you know, I know there's been some days where I'm just like, I get up in the morning on a Saturday and I'm like, I really don't want to, but then we get on here and I'm always uplifted. And, even when I'm just really not thinking I'm going to feel all that excited about it, then I get on here and you guys always cheer me up, and I hear the message I need to hear to push me in whatever direction I need to go in, any point in time. So I'm so thankful for all of you, and thankful that we have continued to do this for as long as we have. I am absolutely amazed at how long we've been doing this. So thank you. Thank you, guys. All right. Well, for those of you who are watching, if you're watching this as a recording, which, well, you would be, because I'm recording it, it's not live. It'll be on YouTube, I'm sure. So if you want to participate with us, we'd love to have you. There'll be some links down below the video where you can learn how to participate with us. Just jump on in there and give us a like if you found this helpful, and share this video with anybody you think could be helped by it, because I know it's helped me, and I know it has helped each one of us on here. And so I'm sure that if you've watched to this point, it must be helping you too. So give us a like for doing that. So anyway, with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.
Adios, amigos.